This is our Getting Started webinar series. We run these every month for our new customers or existing customers who are implementing Getting Started with security operations. It's a high-level overview of how to get started, essentially, and what resources you should be aware of that are out there to help you on your journey. So my name's Sarah Wood, and I'll be hosting today's session and guiding us through a couple of the sections. And my colleague Pete Carchi is also on, and we are both from the outbound product management team at ServiceNow under the security operations business. And so we're really excited to be here and guide you through today's session. We also have a team of other colleagues that come on from time to time to deliver the sessions and to share resources. So thanks to everyone who is part of this series. Now, before we dive into some of the content for today, we do have a few housekeeping pieces here. We have, again, we're on to answer your questions, so you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen in Zoom to ask questions throughout, or you can feel free to post them in the chat, and we will get to them as we can, or we'll follow up with you. The other thing to note is that we will share these slides afterwards. There's going to be a ton of content, a ton of resources, so you can access them in the community. Again, Pete will share that link of where they're going to be posted and where all of these links that we're sharing are posted, so you can grab them from the community. And then once you close out the Zoom session today, you'll be prompted to fill out a short survey, and this is really helpful. We do always look at them. We are looking to, add additional content to these sessions. So we would love to hear what you'd like more of and potentially what you enjoyed. So please do fill that out. And the topics that we're going to come to go over today are here. Most importantly, though, it's all about supporting you on your journey and giving you hopefully a clear idea of what your next steps might be in terms of consuming different resources, planning out your implementation, and how you're going to be able to get there and get implemented. So our goal is really to support you, provide you with those resources to help you ensure that successful start of your implementation. We're not planning to cover forward-looking content today. It's not a roadmap or anything like that, but just in case that does come up, we do always have our safe harbor notice that applies to these presentations. And now we're going to get into the first section with a bit of an overview of security operations in case you're new to the applications. But before we jump into that, we're always interested to know what specifically are you implementing or looking to implement. So today's session is a little bit more focused on our core applications, security incident response and vulnerability response. But obviously we have a bunch of other applications that we'll touch on in the next slide. So if there's other things that you're looking to implement first, or maybe you're an existing customer and you're implementing a new solution that you've never had before, let us know in the chat. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you're not sure, and you'll come away from today with more certainty about what is next for you on your implementation roadmap. So let us know. Thank you to those of you completing the poll. It's always great to see. We've got a few on the vulnerability response side, on the security incident response side, some doing both, and some not quite sure yet, which is totally fine. That's why you're here, right? All right. Great mixture there across the board. Let's carry on, shall we? So this is a little bit of a high level sort of look at what the portfolio consists of. And so you'll see on the left side, you've got your applications and your capabilities that relate to responding to vulnerabilities across the attack surface. So this can be infrastructure vulnerabilities. That's with your traditional vulnerability response. This can be application vulnerabilities with application vulnerability response, cloud, we have container vulnerability response. And if you stay tuned for our roadmap sessions and our what's new sessions, there's actually going to be We're sort of unifying everything even more for customers, so that implementing these solutions is simpler and more streamlined for you, and you have a very unified experience across your attack surface. So again, this is sort of the proactive side. You scan your environment, you understand the vulnerabilities and the misconfigurations that are going on, and then you workflow them from that sort of remediation perspective. And I will also mention that we have OT vulnerability response as well. And we have security posture control, which is our newer application. And this is all about sort of understanding the landscape of your security posture and being able to see what gaps might exist based on the different tools that you have and what they're sort of detecting and what they're covering in your environment. So the other side of the portfolio here is the case management and incident response. So kind of looking at what do we do when we have a security incident, and that's what we're talking about today is a little bit more on the security incident response side. So managing those incidents, whether it's phishing or malware, whatever it might be. We also have dedicated solutions for major security incidents, just given the nature of those incidents and the type of collaborated and large scale response that they require. We have a dedicated workspace for that. We also cover data loss prevention incident response for your data leakage incidents. We have threat intel built into security incident response. We also have a brand new threat intelligence platform called Threat Intelligence Security Center, and that's all about operationalizing your threat intelligence, threat hunting cases, and managing and curating your threat intel within ServiceNow. And then most recently, and perhaps most exciting, is our Now Assist releases. So we have Now Assist across both vulnerability response and security incident response with agentic workflows that we've released both in March and in May this year. So if you're interested in learning more, we've got great resources online that we can share. And then we also have our What's New webinars and our roadmap webinars that cover that content, and those run quarterly. That's a bit of a high level overview. This is more of your end-to-end look at what a workflow and security incident response will typically look like. And so this is really starting with your data sources, so connecting your SIM tools and bringing your alerts in and having that one central system of action and engagement where you'd prioritize your alerts, you'd create incidents, and you would be able to action them right from ServiceNow. So here in security operations, we leverage integrations a lot, right? We know that security teams have a lot of different purpose-built and specialized tools to keep their enterprises secure. And so we integrate with hundreds of different security tools, both on the ingestion side, bringing data in, and then orchestration, enrichment. So, outbound activities where you're going to maybe want to block an IP or isolate a host. If you have tools in your environment that you want to hook up to ServiceNow, we have integrations for you essentially. And so that is how we enable all of these workflows to occur. So one of the great benefits of bringing everything into ServiceNow and creating that single system of engagement is that you have, your CMDB in ServiceNow in some cases, right? And that's a question that comes up that we can address if individuals are interested in going into detail about, do you need a CMDB to use SecOps? And the short answer is no, but it certainly helps. But one of the things that I like to mention here is just that when you have that data in the platform, when you have, all of that business context, you're able to prioritize your incidents and your vulnerabilities even better, right? And being able to prioritize is key when you have so many different alerts and vulnerabilities going on. So I won't go into more depth here. This is just a high level look at the workflow end to end. And a little flavor of the solution and what that looks like for those of you less familiar. This is our security incident response workspace where your analysts are actually doing the work and workflowing those incidents. What I will say here is that you can see in these images the new Now Assist capabilities. These are just some of the select skills that exist in terms of being able to come into an incident and quickly summarize it using Now Assist, which is our generative AI offering, and as well as recommended actions for analysts. So surfacing recommendations to analysts as to how to move forward with resolving that incident. So again, just a flavor of what security incident response looks like on the case management side for those less familiar. But we'll move along and just show a little overview of the vulnerability response workflow. Again, on that attack management side of the portfolio or the exposure management side, it's really giving you that visibility across your attack surface, so across, like I said earlier, infrastructure, application, container, cloud, and understanding what vulnerabilities are in your environment based on the scanners you have. So it sort of all starts with hooking up those scanners and bringing in vulnerabilities. We'll get into a little bit more detail there in the next section. But essentially, you're setting up your calculators, your assignment rules. You're getting that automatic risk scoring and grouping of vulnerabilities and assigning those out to the right remediation teams across security and IT. So you have, again, being on the platform where IT is, you have that connection between the two. If you have a solution vendors, you're able to hook those up and have your recommendations in terms of solutions and patches. You can orchestrate patch management from within vulnerability response. We have exception and deferral workflows that you can set up with our integrated risk management solution as well. And, on the end of the workflow there, just being able to rescan and being able to close out vulnerabilities that have been remediation sort of completes the workflow there. And again, just giving a bit of a flavor of what vulnerability management and exposure management looks like in the platform. This is just a little snippet of the vulnerability manager workspace. And so this is where your analysts and vulnerability managers are able to have that visibility of their attack surface and understand what is their exposure to these different vulnerabilities and misconfigurations, and then be able to workflow that and get all of the reporting and dashboards that are necessary to do their work. So that's your high-level overview there, but more importantly, I think for sort of next steps in your journey, there's a number of different resources where you can dig into more on the solutions and what you can get out of them. I always like to highlight product documentation just because it's such a critical resource. And you can go pretty in depth on the technical documentation for the platform here. So there's a lot of great pages that are organized by product area, and you also can access release notes there as well. So highlighting that first as a really key go-to resource for you guys. The second one I'll call out that not as many people probably know about is our YouTube and demo center. So we have a couple of different playlists that we're updating pretty regularly with different demo videos. So the latest ones include the some of the agentic workflows as well. So if you want to have a quick look at what those are like, you can go in there. We also have this Ask a Ranger playlist, which has some great vulnerability response configuration type videos that you can look at. So these are great resources as well to get up to speed on some of the solutions and get a bit of a demo as well. Next up, we have ServiceNow University. Some of you might know this as Now Learning previously. It's now called ServiceNow University, but the main thing to know here is that there's tons and tons of courses and certifications that you can get. Many are free now, so I believe the online ones are all free and open access. So you can learn on demand we have, our security incident response implementation course. We have our vulnerability response implementation course, the SecOps fundamentals course. There's many there. I've got a post in the community that really recommends and summarizes all of the security related learning. So that is again linked in the post where this event is on the community. But definitely check out ServiceNow University to go really in depth and get the training that you need, especially if you're self-implementing, right? Or if you're trying to build up the ability of your team to be able to configure ServiceNow SecOps. The community, this might have been, how you found out about today's event. This is a really great hub for security operations users all over the globe. So experts on the customer side, on the partner side, on the ServiceNow side. We are all in there regularly. You'll see, articles and blogs from product management. This is also where you have the forum to ask questions and get answers from the ServiceNow community. So really, really great spot for you to go. You'll also see that we have hot topics that we update regularly, our new relatively new, I'll say now, resource library where we're really trying to curate resources for customers in an easy to use self-serve way. So check out the resource library. We're constantly updating it. And then there's also a welcome guide for new customers that might be useful for those of you on the webinar today. And then within the community, I also like to mention this is where we are conducting most of our events now in terms of webinars. And if there's any in-person events, we'll post them here and make sure everyone's aware of them. So there's a centralized events post that you can access, as well as the events tab. In there, we run these getting started webinars and office hours monthly. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have quarterly what's new and roadmap webinars for customers to get up to speed on the latest in security operations. So check that out for all of the latest events. And then lastly here is the ServiceNow developer site. So this is really where our developer ecosystem starts. It's a great resource for essentially all levels, but particularly for more technical team members. This is where you're going to get more of that deeper technical documentation, API frameworks, that sort of thing. And you can also sign up for the free developer program. And this is where you get access to other developers, you get your personal developer sandbox instance, and that's where you can really test and experiment with ServiceNow. So definitely something to check out if you're interested and you want to play around more with an instance. All right, we're going to switch gears a bit and look more closely at the implementation journey, which is, probably why you're all here. So I'm going to be handing it off to my colleague, Pete, to take us through this section, but I will first launch our second poll here, which is all about learning about where you're at in your implementation journey. So I know people are probably implementing soon or maybe this year. But if you don't have plans, that is fine too. That's also probably why you're here, to get a little bit more clarity on that. So we'd love to hear from you and get a sense of where the audience is at. It looks like there's a good mix of people across the board. So split between sort of this quarter or right now, this year, and then no official plans yet. But yeah, let us know in the chat if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in, Sarah, with the first suggestion I have, which is go to the community page. Look for all your resources there. But even more importantly, things like office hours, right? I know there's been some questions that have come in. We try to keep this session somewhat high level. Those office hours are great sessions. They're not recorded. They're there so you can ask those really deep questions, and we have a lot of technical experts on those calls. So I highly recommend that you join those office hours calls for more detail.
Great call out. Yep. All right, I'm gonna wrap up this poll and you can take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I'm Pete. You have a lot of options when it comes to implementing ServiceNow and your security options for your SecOps products, right? First of all, you can engage us, ServiceNow, have a ServiceNow-led implementation via our expert services team. We have a team of consultants that really will guide you through this with leading practices to accelerate your time to value, as well as reducing your risk and also leveraging our Now Create methodology. Expert services can really lead your implementation or collaborate with you through your implementation partner in a whole hybrid co-delivery model as well, if you choose, to boost your implementation success, which would involve expert services kind of participating in parts of all of your implementation alongside your partner. If you're interested in that, your sales executive can kind of give you more information. What we find to be the most common, though, is partner-led implementations where you can choose from a broad range of certified partners within our ecosystem that have expertise within implementing ServiceNow products. A little bit later on, I'll be talking about the Partner Finder site, which is a great little site where you can basically say, I need a partner that knows how to implement SecOps. And you can, granularly kind of nail it down to VR or SIR or DLP or whatever product you're using and be able to find out which implementation partners are your best choices there, right? And then lastly here, you can self-implement. All the documentation and all the resources that are available for our partners are typically available on our website as well, although they do have a little bit different organization for partners, but for you, you can get access to all that information too. This is going to be where you're really kind of running with it yourself, right? This happens quite a bit rare, but it does happen. Not worst comes to worst, but if you ever need the option to call over for expert services and help out with that, that's something you can call over and engage on limited basis, right? To help out with certain things. So these are sort of your three main ways of going about it. With that being said, I'd like to kind of pivot to our maturity models for VR and SIR. So next slide, please, Sarah. This is sort of a standard maturity model overview that we have here at ServiceNow, where when you get started, you're really looking at what we call like the base level or level zero, which is, the traditional manual, a lot of swivel chairing, a lot of disjointed processes, a lot of spreadsheets, which, are easy to get lost in and that you're exporting all this information out of your scanner into these, OneNote or into an Excel spreadsheet, and then emailing things around, which, it's a place to start, but it's not exactly going to be the most responsive or the most efficient way of doing these things, especially when it comes to vulns, right? So once you engage in getting VR set up in your environment, you jump up to this first level, which we call unified visibility, right? Which is where you start to have automation bringing data into vulnerability response, setting up your risk calculators to prioritize and have a way to filter to determine where to start, right? Because this is a deluge of information. And you got to really prioritize for your org, what are your critical vulns that need to be taken care of first, right? You can group those vulns together. You can assign them to the appropriate teams, be that your Linux team, your Windows team, your servers teams, and so forth. And really start to use that automation that removes a lot of the manual activity and giving you more visibility into a single system of record across IT and security, right? I do want to hop in here. As you can see in the bottom, alignment with CMDB, and Sarah mentioned this. A lot of folks think this is a chicken or an egg problem, right? You need CMDB before VR, and you can't do it. That's not true. It's that your CMDB is always evolving, and VR is going to help you get that CMD flushed out and get the most recent information in there because you're going to be scanning regularly. You can do discovery. You can also do service mapping. Plus, you're going to be getting information from your scanners, right? To be very clear about this, as Sarah mentioned before, VR and SIR are not walled gardens, right? You're going to be bringing your tools in, and those tools will talk to ServiceNow and be able to action those items, right? So your CMDB will grow and become, more resilient as you continue to use the tool. So moving into streamlined remediation or stage two, this is where you have basically a better additional level of understanding of your assignments. You're using more integrations to have a more complete picture of your infrastructure. This includes cloud. This includes app as well as containers and things like that nature. You're going to be able to handle vulnerability lifecycle management a lot better, including things like change requests, exception requests, as well as integration and awareness of exception going out to your compliance team, right? Some customers really want this from the start, right? And this is the big drive for the product, especially if they're already using IRM, integrated risk management, and they're working with their CMDB team, which configuration management database, by the way. We love our acronyms in security, but we should probably say what that is once in a while. And in that case, you'll really have the ability to use that scanner data as I manage to augment your CMDB. For instance, in cases where you're finding assets that are not listed in the CMDB. So, you're going to help drive that maturity, right? And then lastly here, we're going to talk about enterprise risk management. VR and risk management are sort of a match made in heaven, right? There's something that works really well together. And you can start to look at your risk trending. You're going to be able to see where all your scanners have integrated across cloud app configuration scans and start to come into automated workflows, right? Where you get that complete picture of your attack surface and you start to have that advanced reporting and integration with teams across your estate. It is possible to get here. It is not a pipe dream. So it's just a process and you kind of progress along it as you continue to use the product, as well as, working with your implementation team for what you really need, right? As we mentioned here as well, SBC, another product, works really well with VR, which is going to help you mitigate your asset hygiene and control as well. With that being said, I'm going to pivot now over to SIR, sort of the same story here, right? Everything starts off with spreadsheets and limited visibility, right? You've got these really long response times, which is death when it comes to incident response, right? We're driven toward responding quicker, with doing more with less, and it's really that automation is going to change how you react to these events, right? So similar cycle of maturity where you have those manual processes, and then you're going to add in your unified visibility level, right? And this is going to be automated incident creation through email ingestion and events. You're going to have things like integrating your SIEM tools, where you're bringing all those alerts in, item creation, prioritization, and automation, as well as efficiency, right? You also have metrics and dashboard reporting, both with VR and SIR, a lot of PA data. You'll be able to look and analyze and see how you're doing, right? You can kind of keep a pulse on your estate. As you move into streamlined remediation, right here, phase two, you start to have more improved visibility and introduce more advanced functionality into your SIR environment, right? Things like threat intelligence data that Sarah mentioned before. Perhaps your threat intelligence security center is providing analyst data over to your incident response people. You can continue to enrich security instance from that threat intel model, things like MITRE ATT&CK, right? Things like common vulnerabilities and weakness, enumerations, and that nature. Other integrated tools, as well as orchestration, right? As I had mentioned before, Open Garden, right? Any of your incident response tools will work with them, either via a standard REST API, or more likely, you'll be able to go to our store, which is just store.servicenow.com, and you can find the integrations. Now, to be clear, those integrations, some of them will say paid, and by that means you're purchasing the service that the tool provides through the tool provider, and then the tool itself integrates through ServiceNow. Just to make sure that people don't understand you're not getting like Rapid7 or Splunk or any of those tools for free. Those are still separate tools that you bring into the environment. I do like to kind of speak of it as a gardener analogy, in that you bring all your tools into our environment and we help you with your gardeners, I had to distill it down into a sound bite. Lastly, in stage three, continued orchestration and remediation, as well as playbooks, Gen AI features, although you can do that much earlier on if you so choose. And you can either do with your playbooks a guided approach where you're really holding the hands of your early analysts, and you can be as detailed as you want in these playbooks to handhold, or conversely, maybe it's common, right? It's things like phishing and you want it to just be dealt with every time it comes in. You can fully automate with playbooks if you so choose, right? At any point in time, you could put in checkpoints in those playbooks where a human would have to overlook those things, but those playbooks really do provide you that power. So, really, we kind of encourage you to focus on achieving stage one first, right? So don't be overwhelmed with this. I know we're really throwing the kitchen sink at you here, but we just want to show how much you can do with the platform, right? Even though it's really a long walk up the hill to get to that orchestrated response. Steady and slow wins the race, and you will get there through your, integration partners or through our expert services, or if you choose to self-implement as well. All right. Moving on. Let's talk about like really high level themes with VR. It really kind of starts, let's start at the very top, right? Let's pretend ground zero, right? You got to set up your integrations to collect VR data from a third party. You're going to be bringing that data into ServiceNow. You're going to chop it up, slice and dice. We love to talk about it that way, but basically, you're going to tune and iterate and refine that data that's coming in. Once that data has been brought into ServiceNow, we start to see that the assets we have in the CMDB, we can kind of establish process needs and workflows around that, as well as strategic and tactical reporting, right? The teams start to address these vulns in ServiceNow, and then we get further buy-in from other teams. Maybe that's risk or other IT partners in your estate. And we really get to iterate on that. And then you leave sub prod and you go live for launch and you use that product to help you prevent those 0 days and other threats to your environment. So I'm going to dive into a little more detail here, right, with implementation components, because at the last slide here was sort of just the high level 6 bullet point. I want to dive into like a little bit of nuance here, right? So where are you going to find that third party scanner app, ServiceNow Store app, as I had mentioned that before? Um, Again, if you don't find it there because you're using an app that perhaps isn't partnered with us, we're not familiar with it, full REST API functionality, right? So that's something you can connect your third-party scanner into the Now database. You start to normalize that data with phone scanners, right? And using those classification lookup rules, and we'll be able to tell where things are coming from, right? Our goal really is to get these findings assigned to the right teams correctly the first time and remediate these vulns, right? So the CI lookup rules and the classification rules and assignment rules all sort of play together to make sure that the vulns are going to the correct parties, right? We do have further tooling to do prioritization to tailor it to your business needs. So knowing which assets the vulns are on and how important that asset is to your company is something you really need to decide on and like put in place when you're handling your implementation for things, whether or not say it's internet facing or PCI DSS compliance or GDPR or anything of that nature, right? It'll help you be able to prioritize those things. That gets tied into with risk calculators, right? These risk score calculators do come out of the box, but you're going to want to tune them, right? Because it is unique to your environment, right? Your crown jewels might not be your neighbor's crown jewels, right? So this is really where we see you starting. This is like the starting steps. Don't let it get overwhelming here. And even with these small starting steps, you're going to start to see a lot of value. So let's look into like level one capabilities, right? After you've plugged in these core like components, what are you going to start doing next? So you're going to think about things like building on top of the core plumbing where you're going to have change management process. For example, applying a patch or making a configuration change that aligns with how your business operates. So things like remediation target rules, change management tie-in, how those processes are all being handled. Establishing exception management in VR. I've spoken about it before, right? It is a deluge of vulns out there. Some of them are going to be low and medium and irrelevant to your business or so far down the line because you've got much bigger fires to deal with because, payment portals have issues or, as I mentioned, other requirements for compliance are needed. That exception management is going to allow you to breathe and allow you to also decide where to leave room and where not. Also, it's going to let you know whether or not you've deferred a whole bunch. Perhaps you've deferred because you needed to, but it's also going to tell you you've deferred this 3 times, right? Do you really want to continue to defer this? So it's going to keep you honest in your reporting to make sure that the things that aren't being reviewed do get the proper attention eventually, right? From a data management perspective, this also relates to, kind of managing and archiving how to deal with really old data as well as, old loans that aren't relevant to what you're doing. So think really hard about how you want to monitor these processes. That's going to be your PA content pack setup. That's all your data collection. That's going to be, mean time to remediate, all that sort of information. It's your speed, what kind of value you're getting out of products, but also trends, right? And that's really something you want to keep an eye on, whether or not you're having more phones, less phones, and being able to shift and adjust from there. All right. So from there, let's take a look at the same concept for security incident response, right? Same ideas here, but a different approach, right? Because VR is a bit more CMDB oriented, a bit more vuln oriented, obviously. Incident response starts with who's doing your incident response, right? Your user personas, your teams. So you really need to think about how you want to break these teams apart. Maybe you're going to do the standard tier 1 through 3, and then your tiger teams. Maybe you use something different, right? Maybe at ServiceNow, we're different from what you're doing and you want to organize it your way. Think about that and think about how you want to set it up, and how you want to have these incidents being sent to certain teams. So that's sort of step one. Once that data is all being brought in, it's being mapped from your tools, right? You're going to start thinking about processes, needs, and workflows, right? Um, and sort of iterate on that. Think about common use cases, right? When you're coordinating your security teams. As I had mentioned before, phishing. I like to start there just because it's low level. We also have phishing playbooks out of the box in SIR that you can work with. You can copy, edit, and change. Um, it's just a really common and great point to start at. You can think about who's involved with all this and what are your common procedures and how to measure progress and trends through reporting on dealing with this. So it's sort of a great starting place. And then, config from there, you're going to look at your orchestration tools, additional SOAR capabilities that can be part of your phase 1 implementation or in a phased approach. You're going to test this all in subprod, kick the tires, and then hopefully be happy with it and get it launched go live, right? Because we really want you to be protecting your environments with our tools, right? We think it's a good place to start. So just to be clear here at the bottom, I do want to note that orchestration and enrichment capabilities can be implemented as a part of initial implementation and also after core SIR is launched for iterative maturity. Nothing is fixed in place with this. It's something you can iterate on and continue to improve. All right, let's dive into a little detail here with implementation components. Um, I won't chew up too much time here because I think I covered it pretty well. Things like user groups, roles, access control lists, and security tags. This is who gets access to what data, right? You need to set this up sort of at the start. Who's tier 1 and who's tier 3, and perhaps tier 3 sees things that tier 1 can't. That's all sort of decisions you need to make, as well as, control lists to make sure it's being authorized appropriately. Certain functionality does not work unless you set up a control list properly. So please be aware of that. Where you're going to ingest your data. Now, ServiceNow Store, right? Mentioned that several times. You're able to configure your key attributes and data, right? You're going to adjust your UI in that workspace that Sarah showed you. Both VR and SIR, those workspaces are configurable, right? They're editable. They can be yours, how you want them to be. Talked about playbooks. That all lives in Flow Designer and Process Automation Designer. I also think it's got another new name. I want to call it Workshop Processes, but I think that's wrong. Workflow, something I'd have to look. I apologize. It's got multiple names now. It's basically where you design your playbooks, right? And you can adjust that automation. You can see what you've got out of the box there. And we really recommend that you copy those so you always have the original and go from there. And then obviously, your data-driven information coming back, right? How to define prioritization, success, and key performances. That's going to be your service level agreements, your metrics, as well as your calculator groups. There are some more plumbing things here to set up, right? You're going to want to centralize your collateral for security operations, things like runbooks, contact lists, tips, connections, the MITRE, things of that nature. Knowledge base is a big deal for incident response, right? You basically can have your KB articles tied to certain events and will pop up for your analysts when they happen. So phishing incident comes in, the platform knows, okay, this is a phishing incident. I'm going to provide all the knowledge bases here at a click for your analysts for what they details that they need. It's really a great tool. And that can even be integrated inside your playbooks, by the way. Those playbooks have extreme capabilities to be flexible as well as to add and remove things on the platform. Um, Define how your teams are going to be collaborated. Things like notifications, UI actions, and catalog items. How those security events are registered. If you want to, the other capability inside the SIR workspace is you can set up teams, right? As in like the Microsoft product. Sorry to be clear. So you could or organize your chats basically straight through the platform to talk back and forth through Teams if needed. And then, as mentioned here, post-incident review, reporting, and contact set up for reporting and being able to follow through with your events. Last slide here, just sort of on implementation components, right? This is a lot of ServiceNow Store app, right? Go there to get your threat intelligence integrated set up, go there to get your orchestration set up, things like Exchange Online, citing search, et cetera. All those are going to be applications on the store page. Again, to be clear, some of them will say free, others will say paid. Typically, the paid applications are the ones that require you to be paying that third-party service. So, for example, Splunk, Rapid7, Recorded Future, pick the litany of security products that are out there. And then lastly, right, you want to have the ability for your users to make your life easy. And in some ways, the easiest hanging fruit there is phishing, right? So the ability to convert reported emails into security incidents, for email forwarding rules, that can all be set up in email ingestion rules and user reported phishing. Really handful, right? And useful to have. So that really kind of covers the high level of like how implementations go. I'm going to talk a quick 3 slides here and then turn it back over to Sarah, basically for resource highlights. She'll drop some links in there. Partner Finder, I mentioned this earlier, super useful, right? You can granularly drill into what type of partner you're looking for. So if you're looking for a VR implementation partner, you can find it. SIR, you can find it. Really recommend using this tool, right? It's going to make your life easier. It's also going to tell you their scores and how well they're received by other implementations, how other customers have felt about them. You really kind of get the full amount of detail there. So definitely recommend going here first. Next up, expert services. This is the internal services that we offer, right? We can either co-deliver, we can do them ourselves. We can also package them for limited engagements. This is really how you contact expert services through ServiceNow, or obviously go through your account executive. They can point you in the right directions. But this is a good page to give you an idea of how we can help out. Next is now create, which is really sort of a roadmap, right? It's going to give you a success packs, scoping guide, implementation sequences, process guides, workshop presentations, and starter stories. If you're going to self-implement, definitely go to Now Create. It's basically going to be the place where you can get a lot of the resources that'll help you go through this process, right? And then again, I'm going to point you back to community. I don't have a slide for it, Karen, or I'm sorry, Sarah and I have mentioned it several times. Community is going to be a great place to get your answers. You can ask those detailed questions or conversely come to our office hours and ask them as well. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah. She's going to talk a little bit how you can get that, what kind of value you see from getting
Awesome.
jobs. All yours, Sarah.
Yes, thank you, Pete. We're going to wrap it up with kind of taking a step back and looking at the value and the outcomes. And this is often where, you're mapping out your implementation. You're sort of saying, what do we want to prioritize first? What are the outcomes that we want to target first, right? And then working back to see what solutions and what pieces of the puzzle you're going to start with, essentially. But we do want to get your input into your top desired business outcomes. So just if you're aware of like what your organization is looking to target, what do you think your team needs to focus on first? Is it accelerating response to security incidents? Is it the critical vulnerabilities that you're dealing with, reducing effort, reducing attack surface, maybe something totally different. These are just a couple ideas, but feel free to share in the chat. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the other outcomes as well, and we're going to share them with you so that you can share them with your team. But we'll keep that open a few more seconds and let people continue to respond. It does look like people, no surprise, are interested in all of the above, right? So you don't have to pick just one. You can reach all of these outcomes, of course, with our solutions with time. So we're going to move on. And these are just some, different metrics that we like to show, just not because, we're trying to, continue to sell you on our solutions, but more from the perspective of an understanding that these outcomes are things that our customers reach relatively quickly. So within just 6 months of going live, you can really make big changes. And I think a lot of the automation that you get on day one out of the box when you're, dealing with the alerts that you're bringing in and the vulnerabilities that you're bringing in, all that great automation that Pete talked about, you do have the ability to reach a lot of great outcomes really quickly. To highlight just a couple here, the idea of analysts closing 2 times the number of security incidents 12 months in. Really, really great outcome. Cutting your mean time to remediate vulnerabilities in half in just 6 months. So these are just some of the great things that we hope to help you achieve in your environments. And then we also like to mention that we work closely with our internal security team that we call Now on Now. So this idea that ServiceNow, we are customer zero. We are the first people to use our products. Typically, we work closely with our teams to, work on, getting them live, to also get feedback from them. And they have, of course, implemented security incident response and vulnerability response and continue to see value from it, have really moved from those manual labor intensive processes to, in this case, using vulnerability response, getting really, really high accuracy in assigning the vulnerabilities, high SLA attainment, and really great productivity results. And the reason I say this is, again, because a lot of things that the internal teams develop as well and use on our product, we develop and make available to our customers. So an example here in security incident response is a lot of the automation that is achieved by the way of playbooks, we do make available in the product, and you will find them released in the product and available in terms of automated phishing playbook, malware, all the different playbooks that we have. There's dozens of them. So this is just a little snippet of some of the benefits that our internal security team has gained from security incident response. A lot of cost savings, again, moving away from those manual processes, being able to automatically prioritize alerts has allowed them to achieve a lot. So always like to just flash it up and remind people that we are also drinking our own champagne, as we say. Last couple slides on this, we will share these. So I know there's quite a bit to look at here. First, looking at the security incident response side, this is where we sort of say getting to those types of results really requires that focus on what your vision is for your implementation, what outcomes you want to achieve, and breaking them down and sort of saying, okay, for this phase of the implementation, we're focusing on, 1 or 2 outcomes, right? And selecting that based on your organizational needs. But these are just a little bit of the examples across, operational efficiency, cost, and risk mitigation of some of the outcomes that you can kind of prioritize and what that might look like from a success metric perspective and what a suggested improvement could look like. So we talked a little bit about that reduction in mean time to remediate. So that's a big one we know for some customers. So this is just, it gives you a sense of where you might target for your implementation and for your goals and suggested improvements so that you can look back in a few months and see how you're doing and how you've moved metrics in your organization. So again, we will share this. I know there's a lot of different things to digest on that slide. And similarly, on the security incident response slide, These are some of the different outcomes that our customers will choose to prioritize, and some of the suggested improvements. So again, looking at that remediation, what's the reduction in time based on reducing that effort, and avoiding costs with legacy systems. Again, we'll share these, but I did like to sort of inspire people with some of the examples that we do have readily available. There's also this post in the community that outlines some of these as well, and that's shared on the community page for this event. Okay. So this sort of wraps us up with this final section. I'll close it off with a couple resource highlights that I like to point out to people. If you're looking to get more customer stories to really build the case for implementing and to understand what other customers out there have actually achieved with security operations, you can access our customer stories page on the website. And you can filter by security operations as well to understand what our real live customers have done with the solutions. So highly recommend checking that out for some of our stories. And then we also have ServiceNow Impact. So this is something that you may have access to already, depending on what you have in terms of your account. So talk to your account team if you want to find out more and understand what you have access with respect to Impact. But it's essentially a customer success solution that's powered by AI, and we have large teams behind it as well. It's really designed to accelerate your value out of the platform and your investment with ServiceNow. And it focuses on, again, value management, product adoption, your platform health, expertise, and you get access to a lot of, again, services tools that will help you get going with ServiceNow. Finally, Impact is part of a broader, ecosystem of resources on the customer success front. So we did talk about ServiceNow University already, which is a really great place. I've seen some good questions that are coming in around, the nuts and bolts of implementation and getting into ServiceNow University, getting into the SIR and VR implementation courses would really be a great deep dive for people if you haven't already done that. And then we also have expert services, which we mentioned. If you're looking to get expert help or advisory from ServiceNow and from our partners, you can engage with us through expert services. This is a summary of some of the resources that we've talked about throughout. Again, we will share the slides and you'll have links to all of this, but we'll just leave that up there for a moment. We did share the resource library in the chat. I think that's really a go-to just because we do link out to all sorts of different things from there. So check that out, and it's pretty self-serve, but we'll share these as well after today. All right, so today's session was part of our Live on ServiceNow series. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have Getting Started webinars monthly. We also have our office hours coming up. So we do those monthly. They are more of an open forum opportunity to ask some deeper questions. So we've had some more high-level implementation questions come in today, but if you have deeper questions, maybe questions specific to your implementation, specific to your environment, office hours is really the place to come and ask those. We tend to have individuals with more deeper implementation expertise on there to help you with that sort of thing. You can also share maybe challenges or best practices. So would really recommend doing that. I think our next one is July 29th. So join us. We also have